talk about the Thomas Cox video? I'd love to review that and allow everybody to take a look at it.
Yeah, so let me introduce it, and then we can kick it off there, Kev. How about that?
Sure, that sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, so this is Thomas Cox and us on a sit down about when we were up in Blacksburg for shooting the Dan video and the whiteboarding videos. Thomas goes a lot into some of the theories that are in this book here, which is Elinor Ostrom. The book is called Governing the Commons. It's all about how you manage a common resource. Think about it as a basic example back in the day when we were living in villages, humans that is, and we had a neighborhood cow or a local pond in which we fished. And it's that common resource and how we as village people, not the village people like that, but we as the village people manage the cows, manage the ponds, manage the fishes in the pond. And that's what all of these governance chats are about. And maybe Thomas will definitely make you think. And that's what he's going to talk about in this video. And we're just gonna kick it off right now. Kev, did you want to say anything before we kick it off?
I know I'm excited to hear it all again. Of course, I was sitting right there, and it was a pleasure to listen to Thomas. He's a very smart guy, and he loves studying everything about governance. And the way he describes it, he has a background in engineering, but he found the human side more interesting, and so he became more interested in human governance, of course. And he is just very excited to be able to help design governance for a system like EOS. So I'm looking forward to seeing this again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's kick it off.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming here and making this happen, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm Thomas Cox, VP of Product for block.one. Kev.
I'm Kevin Wilcox, also known as Kev.
Kev.
Chat.
That's right.
And, we thank you for having us here.
Oh, hey, thanks for coming up.
And I'll go by Blue Jays.
Outstanding. So you guys are the ones who, from my narrow perspective in life, are like leading the charge for EOS Go, the community crystallizing around a shared vision of how the community is going to launch the blockchain, because block.one's not going to.
Right.
Yeah. So there's like this, it's like a quarterback doing a flea flicker pass. It's like, okay, here comes the football. I hope there's someone there to catch it. And that's the community going to catch that ball and make a chain and make things happen.
And we feel the same way. It seems like we're being handed the keys to a rocket ship, if you will. And
oh my
we just want to make sure we know where all the buttons are and how to get that thing off the ground. So
yeah, there'll be a lot of very rapid learning. There's something of a fire hose here for us all, I think. Anyway, you came with a bunch of questions. I'd love to answer as many as I can, and we'll be getting Dan in here later to talk as well.
Kevin will lead off the questions for you. And
super.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, so we are curious. You are working on the governance, the Constitution, and we understand that the community has some part in forming this Constitution.
Right.
What do you see that involving?
That is a great question, and it's currently January, so we've got a little time to puzzle it out. And my best thinking at the moment is something like this, that there's probably some sort of like, you know, when you boot up a computer, it's got the BIOS, and then that launches an operating system, that we're probably going to bake in some kind of like super minimalist constitution that you have to agree to as you log in the very first time before the community ratifies whatever constitutional elements that the community comes up with. And there'll be something, you know, what is the most basic thing that we can't launch without? And that'll go into that like proto-BIOS type constitutionette, I don't know, something really super small. And then we need to be in dialogue here in the next couple of months to figure out what does absolutely need to be in the Constitution that covers the entire blockchain and all the users all the time versus things that really should be left to self-selected groups. You know, so what should the international law be, then what should federal law be, and then what should the state law be, and then local law, and then I'm going to have a club in my local area. And then so my club might have rules inside the city, inside the state, inside the federal, inside international law. And so this idea of layering and nesting is tremendously important, because if you let the the universal constitution be as open and flexible as possible, that leaves open all this creative space for people to find their own way. And I promise you, if I knew the one true way things should be, I wouldn't be here now. I'd be doing something else, making a lot more money, right? Because I would have all this brilliant knowledge. I don't think anybody can know in advance, really, what's needed. I'll tell you, you've got Eleanor Ostrom's book here. This has been guiding my thinking a lot as we prepare, because when you got a blockchain, you've got a common resource that everyone's going to share. They may not share it perfectly equally, but they are sharing it. And we can hurt each other as much as we can help each other when we share a resource. And what Eleanor Ostrom did, and I'm finding this fascinating, is she studied all these organizations over the years that are instances of regular human beings figuring out ways to cooperate around their shared resources. And to me, that is, wow, let's copy this, or at least let's learn from it. And I'll give you a quick flyby of what I've picked up so far.
Sure.
Cheers.
The big three challenges are somebody has to do all of the work to set up the institution in the first place. Okay. There's got to be some sort of, like, imagine you've got this common pool resource, like a goose that lays golden eggs. Well, you got three problems. You need to keep the goose healthy, you need to allocate the eggs fairly, and then you need some kind of institution that everybody agrees to follow to keep the goose healthy and share the eggs, so that people don't come rampaging in from outside and go, oh, there's a goose, let's cut it open, grab the 3 eggs that are in there and skedaddle, and then you got no goose left. So those are the 3 big challenges she talks about in the book, is how do you set things up to start with, which is a ton of work. I mean, to really start an institution for the first time, ton of work. I've done it before. I've done it for trade associations and professional associations. Hard to set up a new organization. We're doing that now with our governance team, with EOS Go. Then you've got this ongoing need to keep the golden goose happy, and the ongoing need to allocate the eggs in a way that's fair to everybody, so everyone feels like they're having their interests respected. And wow, that's a ton of work. And what Ostrom found is that in the dozens and dozens of examples of successful people doing this, they're constantly tweaking things. They're constantly going, yeah, that wasn't quite it. And then the next year they'll change the rules. Like college football, every year at the end of the year, they'll go, what rules shall we change? You know, what, should we change the penalty? Should this be a 15-yard penalty, not a 10-yard penalty, and so on? And so there's got to be a periodic reassessment, because I promise you, when we launch June 1st, we will not have like the perfect rules. We can't. We don't know what we don't know. We can't know those things.
Well, that sort of brings me to my next question, where we understand that there are many things we cannot predict.
Yep.
And it sounds like so far, block.one has done an excellent job of aligning incentives, making sure that everybody has the same general idea of where they want to go,
right?
Even though they are pursuing their own separate interests.
Yes. And see, the alignment of interests is probably the single most important challenge that anybody faces in setting up a blockchain ecosystem to encourage cooperation. Because when incentives are not aligned, behavior's not aligned. And behavior's not aligned, you get win-lose, you get lose-lose, you get people betraying each other, you get prisoner's dilemma setups, all that classic stuff. And the alignment of incentives, I think, has been the primary design principle behind distributed proof of stake and everything that Dan Larimer's tried to do with BitShares and with Steemit prior to this. And we talk about it pretty much every week. How are we aligning the incentives? I'll give you one example. We recently announced that when a token holder votes for their favorite 30 block producers, we're going to use preference voting, which is a very specific kind of voting. And so you'll be able to name your favorite 30 block producers, and whoever gets the top 21 votes, or 20 votes plus 1 rotating seat, will become the block producers. That when you cast that ballot, you have to lock up that token for 6 months. You can't then turn around and sell it the next day. So you can't vote for your buddy and then skedaddle. You are making you are actually, by casting the ballot, you are committing to a 6-month lockup, which means you've just become a long-term shareholder. And so, oh, okay, then I guess I better not do something that's benefits me personally in the short term and harms the golden goose.
But with the opportunity cost of looking up tokens.
Absolutely, big opportunity cost. So you better care about that outcome. You better have a real serious commitment to, yeah, I really want these block producers for the next. And you can change your vote during the 6 months, but you can't get your token out, sell it, and leave.
Right.
That's the lockup.
Aren't we concerned about that reducing voter participation if we have that lockup?
Voter participation is, remember, this is not a democracy, and we're not voting on elected representatives who make rules for, who goes to jail or whether, certain activity should be legalized. This is a property environment only. This is just about shared property. And the most important thing is, do we have people who take the health of the platform seriously, casting informed, careful ballots that they're willing to stand behind? And I don't want large numbers of participation. I want smart participation by people with a lot to lose who are willing to put their money where their mouth is. So yeah, this might mean fewer ballots cast than would otherwise be cast, but they'll be cast a lot more carefully. I think that's good for the health of the platform.
Sure.
And if it's better for the health of the platform, I think that's the right way to go.
So that was one example of, in a prisoner's dilemma, you have basically a defector who does something bad for the system, and then you have something...
Yeah, it benefits himself, though.
It does benefit himself. And then, so it benefits himself, but not the overall collective.
Right, harms the group or harms the other person for their own benefit. It's like you go to a potluck, but you don't bring any food.
Yes. And you explain an example of rewarding cooperative actions.
Right.
Is there something to punish somebody that Ostrom talked about within the EOS IO software? Right.
So Ostrom has my favorite page in her book, by the way, is page 90. The corner's folded down on my copy, and it's highlighted like heck. And these are 8 design principles, and you'll find this on a post I'm writing right now on the EOS Go website, where I'm going to summarize this. And I believe one of our other participants, Sam, is working up like a summary of the whole book because he got really interested in the book. But of the design principles that have to be present for a stable cooperative system to be established and maintained, one of the things you've got to have is the ability to sanction people who break rules. And what's interesting is the sanctions don't have to be very big, but they do have to be pretty quick.
Okay.
And so what we've got baked into our thinking, and I don't know that it's a requirement so much as it is a pattern and an expectation, is every contract ought to have, and we recommend this highly when you design your smart contracts, some provision either in the contract or in the context in which you buy the contract for how shall disputes be resolved. And Ostrom talks about a pattern that she sees out in the world called the self-funded dispute resolution. I think I've got that name right. Where 2 parties are in agreement on, hey, we're both going to share this meadow. And I'll graze my sheep and you graze your sheep. And we're going to agree in advance to graze an equal number because we roughly have equal size herds. And if there's ever a problem between us, we agree in advance that we're going to pay Blue Jays here to sort it out between us. And here's our written agreement, and we'll both pay half the fee to him for his ruling, and then whatever he says, we'll both agree to.
Right.
Okay? Okay, great. And so we have to set it all up in advance of how will we handle it if we have a fight.
Is this an arbitration process?
Right. You're setting up in advance who will be our arbitrator or which arbitration service will we consult.
I see.
And the fact that we'll both pay for it. And if the cost of arbitration is low and it's quick enough and the sanction's substantial enough, we'll probably never need it.
I see.
And I know we've talked about this before in the governance Telegram channel,
right,
where we are wondering about if the cost becomes too high to achieve arbitration, then won't that sort of push out smaller actors?
If the cost of arbitration is excessive, then people will be wronged and they won't seek redress, and then that just reward the person who wronged them.
Right.
That's like when someone charges 5 cents on your credit card that you didn't authorize, and maybe you don't notice it, or you notice it but you don't bother to do anything about it. And if they're dinging a couple million people for 5 cents each, and no one ever like gets mad and calls up and like traces it down, they're just, like, making money and they're ripping people off, and then it's like a very small tick on a very large dog, and they just sit there and they feast on us. So yeah, it's got to be quick and easy to seek redress. That's crucial. And we'll do everything in our power to make that possible. And communities are going to need to do that for themselves also. I mentioned that you might have it in your smart contract that there's arbitration, or more likely, you'll have a license. And you say, okay, so here's the license, and when you put your token into my smart contract, you're agreeing to be bound by my license, which says that in a dispute, you and I agree that we will use one of these 3 arbitration services, and you pick it. When you put your token in, you pick one of the 3, and then blah, 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 blah. And then poof, and the arbitrators are going to be out there marketing themselves as we're quick, and we're inexpensive, and we're really fair, and here's our track record.
Is that one of the ways that we can use any token form, is to settle an arbitration dispute?
Oh, I think that if I were an arbitrator or I were providing arbitration services, I would totally take EOS's payment. And I would find people who had a track record of being really fair, and I'd find something like CA CERT is an example of a group that had its own internal dispute resolution through arbitration. All their training's online, by the way. Look it up, CACERT. Okay. Terrific group. And yeah, oh, another one, Open Bazaar. I don't know if you guys know Open Bazaar. They're a blockchain-based sort of shopping experience. And they've got this baked into their platform as well, that if any 2 parties have a dispute, they do a multi-sig, 2 of 3, and then they pick an arbitrator from a pool of arbitrators. And if you're a member of the platform, you can volunteer your services as an arbitrator for a small fee. And apparently it works for them.
Oh, what did you think of that, Kev? That was certainly a awesome Q&A, and I was catching up on my Ostrom while we were doing that. It says page 90 is his favorite part, so.
Yeah, and listening to Thomas is it's a joy, because he does a good job of really bringing in other analogies, like you heard him talk about college football. The Golden Goose, of course, is from Eleanor Ostrom's book. Arbitration is a big topic. He did go into it in some detail, which I appreciated. I know a lot of folks have worried about arbitration. To me, having small actors pushed out of arbitration is an issue. I'm wondering if there's some way the blockchain will actually pay for arbitration, if there will be some kind of a fund that will help with that, or if it will be totally free market, where all the actors involved must pay for the arbitration, where that could become something similar to like the US, where you have people who just sue because they know the other party can't necessarily afford a good lawyer. The next thing you know, you have a situation that isn't beneficial for the small players. I mean, maybe I'm getting carried away. I want to hear your thoughts there.
Those are good ideas. I mean, so you're thinking a arbitration service outside of the blockchain, where parties sort of contract a private arbitrator to dispute, to resolve their dispute, and have those sort of deals or negotiations applied back onto the blockchain, or the blockchain could, as a part of their inflation funding, not only fund block producers, but fund arbitrators as well. Is that the sort of
That's
options?
what I'm wondering. Yeah, I think so. And it sounds like, I know the EOS governance channel, which if you haven't spent any time in there and you are interested in governance, you should definitely check it out. There are some very thorough conversations in there. You'll talk to Thomas, and you'll talk to Ian Grigg, and a lot of other very smart people in the chat. But arbitration, I mean, from my personal opinion, I would like to see it on the blockchain in terms of funded by the blockchain itself, and that way everybody has a fair shot and nobody's trying to abuse. I feel like it'd be harder to abuse that system. However, I don't want to argue this topic too much, because you can find plenty of that over in the EOS governance channel. I'd like to talk about those the golden goose situation, though.
The golden goose and gaming the system. I mean,
Yeah.
Wherever humans are, we're going to find a way to game things. There are people who find glitches and ways to get past things, and when it comes down to it, the only ones who can protect us from gaming systems are humans and arbitrators. And and sometimes the spirit of the law and the letter of the law are two different things, and that's, lawyers have made a career out of it. Lawyers have made a lot of careers out of these things. I think at some point in my past, I was looking at dispute resolution as a field, and it is a very extensive field: conflict and dispute resolution, and even mediation. Mediation right now, in the practice, you can hire mediators to settle disputes among, for example, in the workplace, between the employer and the employee, and mediation is a big sort of save over having to hire lawyers over hiring lawyers. So that's the same thing. I mean, I don't know. Like you said, there's a lot bigger experts in the field than us, but it is going to be a very big field in this area when you have these decentralized autonomous collectives or companies or communities. I've actually heard all of those different variations. Do you know, Kevin, in a DAC, is it a community, a collective, or a company?
So the original, Dan is the one who came up with the term DAC. It's a decentralized autonomous company, is the way he described it. However, it's now been known more commonly as a DAO, D-A-O, which is decentralized organization. I think a collective really describes it well myself. I think company is, a company is a strong word, and I think corporation is another word that kind of rhymes with company in my mind. But I'd like to go back to when we talk about arbitration. Thomas Cox mentioned an open bazaar example. Open Bazaar is a decentralized marketplace. It works. It's available now, and they have a system in place where, let's see, the arbitrator. I'm on their website right now. It says you have an arbitrator is hired, and most of the time, for most payments, when you go back and forth, you don't need an arbitrator, right? Someone receives the item, everything works out. There's no moderator needed. The moderator is only hired to bring in, only brought in when normally you may have, for example, if you have a dispute resolution, you just file it with your credit card or with your bank, and you'd say, look, these guys didn't pay me, or you go through PayPal. You say, these guys sent me a broken item. I would like a refund. And the bank will charge it back because they want to keep your business, or PayPal will do it for you. And the merchant doesn't have any chance to say their side. There's no back and forth between there. It's basically all customer, and the merchant has no chance to state their case. So in the open bazaar model, the moderator hears both sides and only accepts a fee if, let's see.
Both sides are happy, I guess.
If both sides are happy, right?
That sounds like a win-win, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a very simple example. I mean, obviously with a blockchain like EOS, where you have all these different dApps and there's all kinds of different use cases far beyond just buying and selling, there will be far more complicated issues that will come up. And actually, that brings me, it's a little bit off topic, but I'd like to bring up the scam airdrop for EOS. Please, there is no such thing as an EOS airdrop. The EOS token will never be airdropped, so please don't fall for any of these scams. They're coming in all kinds of different styles. There's a Google form they want you to fill out. They want you to join a scam Telegram channel. Just make sure that there is never an EOS airdrop. There will be tokens built on EOS like Everpedia, and those tokens will be airdropped on the EOS distribution list, but the actual EOS never. So be very careful, be vigilant. Going back to Thomas Cox, Blue Jays, what else did you take from the video?
Yeah, so again, I see we have this pool, like Thomas talked about the golden goose. Now, I want you to sort of help me understand this, Kevin. Is the golden goose the EOS blockchain? Is that what it is?
The golden goose is basically laying these golden eggs, and it can only lay them so fast. And then if the goose is pushed, like for example, if the goose is stressed so that it lays 2 eggs per week as opposed to the healthy 1 egg per week, I mean, sure, you'll get more eggs more quickly. You'll get eggs more quickly, I should say, but you will wear the goose out faster, and the goose will not, in the long run, will not produce as many eggs. So what you've done is you've stressed the goose, and you've actually put a harm on the network. You can think of it like a block producer keeping too many resources for themselves, right? And the block producer is not helping the community, and therefore, in the long run, the block producer is more of a value taker, I guess you could say, a value seizer. So So I
Yeah,
guess
some
does that answer
some people just like one hard boiled egg for lunch for breakfast, and some people want a 5-egg omelet. Is that it?
I think you're. I think is that what you do? You golden eggs? You eat them? I didn't know that.
Oh man, no, I keep the whole thing is solid, right? So
Do they sell those at Costco?
no,
Where
they don't. The
Oh.
free range golden goose, golden free range, right?
I only like my geese's free range, man. I mean, they're gonna be flying free, walking free, all the freedoms.
All
But
right.